Trigger warning for ableism and suicide attempt mentions. When I was a kid, I very clearly remember that time we played a game in PE class. Me, a disabled kid, always did a little less than the rest of the kids in my class, but that time things were different. The game was like this: the fastest girl in our class will run from left to right, and us in front of her had the mission of making it to the other side without getting blocked by her. One by one, the kids agilely avoided her, until it was just her and me. I tried many times to outrun her, to trick her, but she always caught me. At one point, I just gave up, fell into the ground, and burst into tears. I told my PE teacher I wasn't feeling so good, because that was the first excuse I could have come up with that I thought she'd understand. I remember looking up above, tears running down my cheeks, the kids that made it looking at me with a funny look in their eyes, morphing into a big, unbreakable wall. It dawned on me then that this was what my life was going to be like forever. A lonely, sheltered kid on the outside, looking in. Victor is a really good character, but most importantly, he's a good disabled character, which is sadly very rare to come by. There has been a raging resurfacing of ableist rhetoric, one that, if you really think about, never left, but rather that disabled folk are finally beginning to stand up for themselves and point it out, to the annoyance of able bodied people. This awful treatment is palpable in our post COVID world. We have individuals using ableist slurs, villainizing psychotic disorders, these two memes, which are often used to silence concerns of disabled folk regarding the culture and society as a whole. People getting angry over blind voice actresses playing blind characters. Thousands and thousands of people, including those with left wing ideologies and that belong to marginalized communities, minimizing the real pain of disabled people, claiming the issues in question do not exist and that we need to stop exaggerating. Being disabled in the present culture is incredibly difficult. Nowadays, I find myself feeling invisible, whether it's in the subway where no one gives me the seat, or in my own close circles where people deem me asocial because I don't go out much. It's a lonely, isolating experience. An experience that is perfectly reflected in Arcane's Victor. But what makes him a good disabled character, and why does that even matter? Join me as I attempt to analyze one of Arcane's best characters and figure out exactly why disabled characters like him are needed now more than ever. Part 1: A Great Discovery. The moment Victor steps into the story, he's immediately likable and walks with a refreshing confidence. He's a little reserved, but he speaks his mind and he quips. At the very same time, his disability also steps in, like it is an inherent part of his character, because it is. And the way it is depicted really made an impression on me upon first watch for how accurate it was. From which hand he supports his buddy on the cane, to the way he limps. It almost feels unapologetic and authentic, much like Victor himself. You see, Victor is funny and jokey and charming. He knows his talent and how smart he is. But he also knows how the fact that he's disabled and that he came from the Undercity contributed into alienating him from the upper class society of Piltover the second he walked into it. Victor isn't just disabled for the sake of character design like in some cases. His disability isn't surface level whatsoever. It is openly talked about and acknowledged by Victor himself. And that does not diminish how secure of himself he is, how he can hold the power to change the world. Of course, he doesn't do this alone. Very early on in Act 1, Victor encounters Jace. Matter of fact, his first scene ever has Jace at the center of it. Victor listens to Jace's words back at his banishment trial, and he is inspired by them. Enough to put himself in a risky situation and save some of Jace's research. When he meets him just as Jace is about to take his own life, he tries to joke around with him to melt the ice, only for Jace to be irritated. A clear sign that Victor has been a very lonely person and sheltered from the rest of the world, which is a very, very disabled experience. The bad blood doesn't last long though. When Jace loses his purpose, demonstrated by the bracelet he always wears, Victor bonds with him by opening up about how difficult it is to make it in an ageless, classless society like Piltover, but how, regardless, he pushed through with mere self-belief. Jace is moved by this. And the deal is sealed when Victor hands him his bracelet back, his purpose back, which he'd thrown away before he attempted. Victor knew what that meant to him, and they'd barely known each other by that point. Victor's relationship with Jace is incredibly beautiful, and it holds an overwhelming weight that I'll talk about later. But the thing about this moment is that it was the moment I knew Victor was something else. That I wasn't about to experience disabled trauma porn, but a much layered and complex story. One that was inevitably going to end up in a tragedy of Greek mythology proportions. Part 2. Stuck in the Middle. In Act 2, a 7-year time skip occurs, and when we see Victor after all those years, he looks worse. So much worse. During my first watch, I was disappointed. I'm so used to disabled characters succumbing into their illnesses and dying. Used to the idea that disabled people will be happier dead, like it is portrayed in some media. But almost 2 years after I first watched the show, I had a slight change of mind. In those 2 years, my body had worn off and I had become more disabled. Last time I went to the neurologist, they told me whatever nerve damage or pain I have could just be part of my congenital disability, that there's nothing I can do about it. Nothing I can do about it except live. Victor's transformation from Act 1 to Act 2 is a parallel to what happened to me and what happens to so many other disabled people. We grow old and our bodies become weaker and more vulnerable. We feel stuck in our own situation and we constantly contemplate our very existence. Why we're alive, what our future's gonna look like, if there is a future at all, if there's anyone that will even help us move when our bodies can't anymore. Is that life really worth living? Those are the questions we ask ourselves while the world moves forward, on a day like any other. With this new perspective, I couldn't help but fall deeper in love with Victor's character. Not only is he very openly disabled, but the writers don't shy away from his disability. People that are not disabled, I've noticed, have a hard time understanding the complexities of disability and how it translates into the media. We're often portrayed as heroes or as poor things, and sometimes people refuse to look at the harsh truth. Disability is, well, disabling. Sometimes it tears you apart, sometimes it empowers you. It is a complicated condition that should not be sugarcoated. There is a pain, a loneliness in disability, and now that I'm a little older, I can't help but admire the direction they took with Victor. It speaks to the darker side of those that live with disability day after day. Even though it hurts me deep inside that this boy will never be human or happy again, when Victor says he can feel his body rotten, I feel completely seen by him. From the moment Heimerdinger shuts their plans down, Victor changes. There is a frustration, a sadness that wasn't there before. He's running out of time and he feels like he hasn't done anything to leave the earth better than he found it. He begins to drown in the darkness, acting in the shadows and having a sense of corporal dread, not wanting to be seen by the public in his disabling state. Things only get worse from there. As Jace and him drift apart, he becomes obsessed with trying to figure out the hex core. He doesn't sleep, doesn't eat, and acts recklessly more than adventurously like he did once. He does not care for his body. He needs to leave a mark. The mutation must survive, no matter the cost. When Sky comes to visit Victor and tries to make a move on him while his mind is completely locked in the hex core, she says that he should leave it for now, that there is always tomorrow. But to Victor, that just isn't the case. At this point in time, you can't save him and keep him like how he was before. Victor is too far gone. His mind losing its hold on reality and his past dreams. His body eroding, his cane now a twisted crutch, a mirror of his deteriorating self. This isn't a positive arc. This is a disabled man carrying the weight of a chronic illness, which is itself a product of the system failing him and the people from the Undercity. It is a reflection of what it's like to be disabled in our society. Doctors shrug at us and then we die. There is no money and then we die. We become nuisances. People leave because of that, and it ends with us sitting in a dark room, drifting away. That's what Victor is going through, and it's ugly and heartbreaking. But it doesn't feel fetishizing whatsoever. It feels compassionate towards Victor, understanding, naked, real. It's funny. I usually hate sub stories featuring disabled characters. Like I said before, I hate when disabled characters succumb into loneliness and sadness. And I think writing characters like that is just irresponsible for so many reasons. But in Victor's case, it feels like a very real depiction that doesn't pull any of its punches. A door that opens fully for us to see what's inside. We sit in a dark room with him, seeing him completely. But there is nothing we can do for him. It's too late. Too late for anything at all. And then we're shown a younger Victor at the beach, creating like he always does. Separated from the rest of the kids his age by a wall he cannot climb, on the outside looking in. And all he can do is keep on creating and be his own friend. If you're disabled, I can guarantee you have experienced a moment like this in your life. And for that, I cannot frankly call this writing irresponsible. It's just so incredibly human. So much so that it's hard to look at it in the eyes. It was, at a moment, hard for me too. But the second I did, I understood every single writing decision for his character. Not all disabled stories have to be about champions, about overcoming. Some others can just be about the pain of it all, and make the audience feel unable to look away, that they can do nothing but sit with it. Since an inventor he meets that lives in the caves near the beach is a complete foil to him. Much like Victor, he's lonely and he creates, but Saint has different priorities. Victor, from a very early age, was empathetic and kind, and those are qualities he carried into adulthood, and that were shaped by the fact he is from the Undercity and disabled as well. Much like many marginalized folk, Victor cannot understand the idea of not caring for those in need. But Saint doesn't think those things get anyone that far in life. He believes some things must survive and that other things must be sacrificed in order for that to happen. He believes in a greater good than life itself. And younger Victor very quickly rejects that flawed line of thinking. But as his body continues to deteriorate, as his work is rejected over and over, as he loses his only friend to politics, Victor falls for it. He gets carried away. And by doing that, he loses himself and causes so much damage that all he can do is sit and watch what he has done. Part 3. A whimper, then a bang. Before shit hits the fan, there are two instances that mark the very clear ending of Victor's trust in Jace. By the way, I'm still gonna talk about them. I wasn't baiting you, I swear to God, we'll get there. The first instance is when Jace meets Victor at the bridge after he ordered to have it blocked. Victor's mind is fresh with Singh's idea, but the wish he had to share that with Jace gets overshadowed when Jace gets angry at him for breaking the rules of the bridge blockage. And he talks down to him like he's a kid. Victor is shocked and hurt to hear that Jace is the one that ordered it in the first place. As they continue their argument, Jace ends up saying that the people from the Undercity are dangerous. This cuts Victor deep. After all, it's his people and their suffering that motivated him to create and what got him to this point. There is a loyalty among Sonites, as Silco once mentioned, because it ensures survival. Sun represents all the people that have been failed by those above them, and that includes disabled people. If Jace thinks Victor's people are dangerous, then he's also talking about Victor himself. If we don't stand together, if we detach ourselves from our identity and those that match it, we lose completely. Victor knows this very well, and it's very clearly displayed when Jace tries to be affectionate and apologize for his words, and Victor utterly rejects him. Jace asks him if there was a breakthrough with the hex core. Victor looks back at him and he lies. His trust in him starts to crack beyond recovery. He realizes that he is alone in all of this. The second instance is when Mel proposes to use Hextech to create weapons, and Jace seems to lean into the idea. Victor is angered at this. It goes against everything he stands for, not only as a scientist that loves human life, but as a Sonite and as a disabled man. He knows that in war, those from marginalized groups are the ones that suffer the most. He has probably seen it happen himself. It is his motivation to improve the lives of his people, not destroy them. He believes there is always a choice to pick life over bloodshed. Him and Jace have another argument, and, well, the cracks get bigger. After that point, Victor is gone. He injects the Shimmer variant onto his disabled leg, and it changes his DNA to the very core. Next time we see him, he's at the bridge, dropping his crutch and leaving it behind to live like he hasn't been able to do. He lets go of his identity as a disabled man and gets a taste of how things are on the other side. He screams in catharsis, feeling every time he felt trapped by his limitations piling up. A lot of people see this moment as victory, haha, but there is a very clear tragedy hidden underneath. The leg isn't cured, it's corrupted. It's not Victor. If you're disabled, stop me if you heard this one before. Have you ever tried to catch up to your able bodied peers to prove to them you're not as disabled as they think you are? Have you ever come back home in pain because of it? Have you ever cried in frustration of not having the same opportunities and liveliness as them? Have you destroyed your disabled self for the sake of conforming to able bodied society? So you can leap as fast as a boat and then later find out it wasn't worth it at all? This is what dooms Victor. This is what wrecks his body and what kills Sky. The second he threw his disability aside, he lost himself until he realized that by shaping ourselves into something we're not, we end up with damage that is sometimes irreparable. In his regret, Victor tries to end his life, but is stopped by Jace. He comes to the realization that he became what he hated. He chose the path that led to the end of life, and in the process, he worsened his very own. He holds his grudge tightly and begs his partner to destroy the Hex Core. They failed and drifted from their true intentions. Victor says that he has to make it right, learning from his mistake and detaching himself from it. But little did he know this choice wouldn't even matter, and that he'd be pushed into the monster he created again and forced to lose the last bits of humanity he had. He is what happens when we twist and turn to be the normal society expects us to be, into what they claim to be the happiness and fulfillment. He is the pain we all go through every day in trying to climb the unbreakable wall. As Victor's arc reaches its conclusion, I can't end the video without talking about now, before a bunch of homophobic ding-dongs come at me with shit like, they're just friends, me. First off, why are you watching Arcane when one of the main characters is like top 5 gayest characters to have ever been on the silver screen? And second of all, love comes in many shapes and forms. You could have a love story with your pet, a book, that egg sandwich you ate that one time that was a little too good. And of course, you can have love stories with your friends. Victor and Jace's relationship is a love story. A very, very sad one at that. And I do believe the writers meant for it to be that way. They have a coded proposal scene, a marriage scene, a scene where Victor asks Jace to sign the divorce papers, and finally the divorce scene. Ouch! But the reason why I center their relationship in regards to Victor as a disabled character isn't because I have Fugoshi brain rot. No, I'm normal, thank you very much. It's just that J-Beck as a friendship moves me beyond words when I look at it from my eyes, the eyes of a disabled person. A lot, if not most of us, grew up lonely and constantly being misunderstood. I always found it hard to connect with people. And when I did, they broke my trust or had ulterior motives. There's something very pure about Victor and Jace's bond. A literal bond, Jesus Christ, we get it! I might have a lot of beef with Jace, but I can put the hater in me aside and admire how gentle he is with Victor and how much he truly loves him. One might even say that his love for Victor is too intense. The first time they have a one-to-one chat, they immediately connect, and Jace gets a light in his eyes, as if Victor had given him hope he thought lost. And a short time later, they're speaking for hours, riffing off each other, and finishing the other's sentences. There is not a better feeling in the world as a disabled person than to find someone who just gets you. One that isn't there with you for brownie points because you're disabled, but because they see you and they love you. Jace constantly reminds Victor of his value, reassures him when he's lost, and protects him in a way that reminds me of the people in my life who have protected me from danger. Not out of pity or because they think I'm a baby that can protect themselves, just out of real love and affection. It is such a special and rare sensation to feel as a disabled individual. And that's what makes their eventual fallout all the more painful. I have had many friendship breakups, sometimes because our values do not align, or because they don't respect a part of my disability. Watching Victor slowly lose his trust in Jace is heartbreaking because I've lived that awkwardness, that uncomfortable feeling in your gut, the feeling that something is broken between you two, but that you still deeply love them. Like Victor said, the only reason these two stay together for as long as they did is simply because they loved each other too much to let go. I often have the feeling Victor showed Jace a different perspective as an individual from the Undercity, and that said perspective got more and more lost the more time Jace spent in the political world. Huh. Didn't that sound a little too familiar? Were they in the writer's room like, hey, let's make Jace your typical left-wing political figure? Nevertheless, the love they have for each other still remains. Even after their friendship is silently broken, when Victor tries to end his life as guilt eats him alive, Jace comes to him, warm, and they talk about their bright past. Victor decides to trust Jace one last time in destroying the Hex Core. And Jace, heartbroken at the fact Victor's death is around the corner, accepts and promises him that he will destroy it. But, of course, Jace doesn't. After the bombing on the council, Victor lays in the debris, half dead. Jace watches him in horror and tastes what a life without him is like for a brief second. And he can't deal with it. All because of love, devoted love. A love without any catches or other intentions. A love pure and kind and intense. And as a disabled person, I can't help but shed tears at that. Conclusion: A most glorious evolution. Victor, for the longest time, terrified me. I honestly thought he was as good as dead the second I saw his state in Act 2. And now he terrifies me for other reasons. He's a textbook definition of a disabled character Bechdel test failed. Yet he is and remains one of the most powerful and layered representations of disability I have ever seen. He challenged me and forced me to change my previous conceptions on what good disabled representation looks like. It just shouldn't work, but it does. Because the beauty of his character lays in the details, lays in the attention you give it. And that is a monumental representation that I haven't seen since Oracle Year 1. Or Hawkeye. Of course, we still have a long way to go. All the problems that I mentioned at the very beginning haven't magically gone away. Remember those tweets I showed during that segment? Well, one of the tweets was from an Arcane fan, so clearly the battle to be seen by able-bodied society isn't over. But I feel like characters like Victor are paving the way for better representation, one that views us not as heroes or poor things, but as humans, with desires and bonds and flaws and greatness and pain and happiness, the whole deal. If there were 100 more characters like Victor in the future, I would say it's looking bright. Not only will it allow able-bodied people to see us completely, but it will allow us, the disabled, to stop trying to climb the wall, but instead turn around and realize there's so many people like us in there, and that whatever pain we have inside, we won't ever have to deal with it alone. Thank you for watching.